Jacksonville, Florida, a sprawling city on the Atlantic coast, known for its beaches, its rivers, and its music. But beneath the surface, a darkness lurks. Gang violence casts a long shadow over the city. Young lives are lost too soon. In the heart of this struggle, a voice emerged, a voice filled with pain, hope, and raw talent. His name? Julio Foolio. Julio offered an escape. His music resonated with the streets. He spoke their language, lived their struggles. He rapped about life in Jacksonville, the good, the bad, and the ugly. He was real, authentic, a beacon of hope in a city yearning for change. But fame, as it often does, comes with a price. Julio's lyrics were raw, uncut. They reflected the harsh realities he witnessed. He spoke of violence, poverty, and survival. He challenged rivals, exposed truths, and captivated listeners. His words resonated with those who lived it, but they also attracted unwanted attention. The streets were watching and they were listening. His talent was undeniable. His star was on the rise. Yet danger lurked around every corner. And as his fame grew, so did the target on his back. Little did he know his time was running out. Julio's journey began in the streets of Jacksonville. He grew up surrounded by music. From a young age, he gravitated towards rhythm and rhyme. He channeled his experiences into his lyrics, painting vivid pictures of life in the city. His music became his outlet, his escape from the harsh realities surrounding him. He started small, performing at local parties and gatherings. His raw talent and authentic lyrics quickly gained attention. People connected with his honesty, his vulnerability. He wasn't just rapping, he was telling stories of survival, of struggle, of hope. His music resonated with a generation yearning for a voice. Word of Julio's talent spread through the streets and beyond. Social media became his platform, his voice amplified by every share and like. He amassed a loyal following, fans drawn to his authenticity and raw energy. His music videos garnered millions of views, propelling him further into the spotlight. The streets had spoken and they had chosen Julio Foolio. His rise was meteoric, his talent undeniable. He had the potential to break free from the cycle of violence that plagued his city. He represented hope, a testament to the power of music to transcend circumstance. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Julio's lyrics weren't just words, they were a reflection of his reality. Life in Jacksonville was a constant struggle for survival. He witnessed violence, poverty, and despair firsthand. His music became his outlet, a way to process the trauma and pain that surrounded him. He rapped about losing friends, about the constant threat of violence. His words were raw, unflinching, and deeply personal. He didn't shy away from the darkness, he embraced it, transformed it into art. His authenticity resonated with listeners who recognized their own struggles in his music, but with recognition came danger. His lyrics, while powerful, also exposed the underbelly of Jacksonville. He challenged rivals, called out injustice, and refused to be silenced. This boldness, while admirable, made him a target. The streets were listening, and not everyone appreciated his message. Despite the risks, Julio continued to speak his truth. He refused to let fear dictate his art. He believed in the power of his music to inspire, to uplift, and to spark change. He was a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope in a city consumed by shadows. As Julio's fame grew, so did the scrutiny. Every move he made was amplified, every lyric dissected. The streets watched, and so did his rivals. The line between his art and reality blurred, and the consequences became increasingly real. The threats started subtly. Whispers in the streets, ominous messages on social media. But as Julio's star continued to rise, so did the intensity of the danger. His music had made him a target, and now his life was on the line. He tried to navigate the dangers, to protect himself and those he loved. But the streets are unforgiving, and the price of fame can be steep. The very thing that had given him a voice, that had offered him a way out, was now putting his life in jeopardy. The clock was ticking, the tension was palpable, and on a fateful night in Jacksonville, tragedy struck, forever changing the landscape of the city's music scene. Days before the tragedy, a sense of normalcy hung in the air. Julio Foolio, riding high on the success of his latest track, was living his dream. He performed to sold-out crowds, his music blaring from car speakers across Jacksonville. The streets vibrated with his energy, his lyrics a soundtrack to their lives, but beneath the surface, a current of unease rippled. The streets, though seemingly captivated by Julio's star power, whispered of escalating tensions. Rivalries, simmering below the surface, threatened to erupt. Social media, the megaphone of the streets, buzzed with cryptic messages and thinly veiled threats. Julio's lyrics, often interpreted as jabs at rivals, fueled the fire. The online world became a battleground, where words were weapons and every post a potential trigger. Rumors swirled through the streets like wildfire. A chance encounter, a disrespectful gesture, an overheard conversation. Each incident, real or imagined, heightened the tension, pushing the city closer to the brink. The streets thrived on drama, and Julio Foolio was at the center of it all. Despite the escalating situation, Julio remained defiant. He refused to be silenced, to let fear dictate his actions. He continued to perform, to release music, to live his life on his own terms. His courage was both inspiring and concerning. He was a beacon of hope, but also a lightning rod for trouble. His inner circle pleaded with him to be cautious, to lower his profile. They understood the unwritten rules of the streets, the high stakes involved, but Julio, fueled by a potent mix of youthful invincibility and unwavering loyalty to his roots, refused to back down. He was determined to rise above the fray, to use his platform to inspire change, even if it meant risking his own safety. The local news, a grim chronicle of the city's struggles, reported a spike in gang-related violence. Drive-by shootings, once a tragic anomaly, became a terrifyingly regular occurrence. The streets were on edge, the tension palpable. Fear hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket over the city. Law enforcement, stretched thin and battling against the tide, increased patrols in high-crime areas. But their presence did little to quell the unrest. The violence, it seemed, had taken on a life of its own, fueled by a potent mix of poverty, despair, and a thirst for revenge. Julio, despite the escalating danger, refused to be confined. He continued to move through the city, his presence a defiant act against the encroaching darkness. He visited friends, frequented local businesses, and never shied away from his fans. He was determined to live a normal life, to hold on to the hope that had fueled his rise. But the weight of the streets was ever present. His lyrics, once an escape from reality, now mirrored the violence that surrounded him. The line between art and life blurred, his words becoming both a reflection of and a catalyst for the chaos that threatened to consume him. The air crackled with anticipation, a palpable sense of dread settling upon the city. Each passing day felt heavy, pregnant with the potential for violence. The streets, once alive with music and laughter, now echoed with a nervous silence, punctuated by the wail of sirens in the distance. Julio's name, once uttered with reverence and admiration, was now spoken in hushed tones, laced with concern and fear. The streets, once united in their support of the rising star, were now divided, fear and uncertainty eroding the sense of community. He withdrew further into himself, seeking solace in the company of his closest confidants. The weight of his city, of his community, rested heavily upon his shoulders. He carried their hopes and their fears, their dreams and their despair. The pressure was immense, the burden almost unbearable. The streets, hungry for any news, any development, buzzed with rumors. Sightings of Julio were reported and debated, his every move scrutinized. The city held its breath, bracing for the storm that seemed inevitable. The question wasn't if, but when it would break. February 6, 2020, a date forever seared into the hearts of those who knew and loved Julio Foolio. The night began like any other, the streets alive with the rhythms of the city. Unaware of the tragedy about to unfold, life went on. Julio, fresh off a recording session, stepped out of a studio, his entourage flanking him. The air was thick with the promise of a Florida night, the scent of jasmine and exhaust fumes mingling in the humid air. Laughter and conversation filled the space around him, a brief respite from the ever-present tension. Unbeknownst to them, danger lurked in the shadows, a predator stalking its prey. The sound of screeching tires shattered the night, followed by a deafening barrage of gunfire. Chaos erupted, screams piercing the night as those caught in the crossfire scattered for safety. When the dust settled, the silence was deafening. The air, once filled with laughter and hope, now reeked of gunpowder and despair, and in the center of it all, a rising star, forever extinguished. Before the fame, the feuds, and the fear, there was just Julio, a young boy with a disarming smile growing up in Jacksonville. He wasn't born with a silver spoon. Life in his neighborhood was a constant struggle, but even amidst the concrete jungle, a spark of hope flickered within him. Music became his refuge, his escape. The rhythmic cadence of hip-hop resonated deep within his soul. He would spend hours listening to the greats, Tupac, Biggie, Jay-Z. As he grew older, he discovered a passion for creating. He began to pen his own lyrics, reflecting his world. His talent was undeniable, a raw authenticity. He wasn't just rapping, he was storytelling. Life in Jacksonville wasn't easy, especially for a young black man navigating poverty and violence. Julio saw things no child should witness, experienced losses that scarred his psyche. He lost friends and family to the streets, victims of a cycle of violence. He channeled his grief and frustration into his music, a testament to societal neglect. He learned to navigate the world with a cautious swagger, masking his vulnerability. But even amidst the darkness, a flicker of hope remained. He clung to the belief that something better awaited beyond the concrete jungle. Loyalty was everything on the streets of Jacksonville, a sacred bond forged in the crucible of shared experience. Julio's crew, his brothers in arms, were his family, his lifeline in a world where trust was a precious commodity. They had his back, always, no matter the cost. But the streets were a fickle mistress prone to jealousy, betrayal, and violence. As Julio's star began to rise, casting long shadows over his rivals, the dynamic shifted. Envy crept into the hearts of those he once considered friends, poisoning the well of brotherhood. Lines were drawn, alliances tested, and the streets became a battleground for supremacy. Julio found himself caught in a web of loyalty and betrayal, forced to question who he could trust, who had his best interests at heart. The price of fame, he soon realized, was a heavy one, often paid for in blood and tears. The streets had a way of turning brother against brother, of testing the limits of loyalty. And as Julio navigated the treacherous terrain of rising stardom, he knew that not everyone would celebrate his success. Some, consumed by envy and resentment, would seek to tear him down, to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Despite the ever-present danger, Julio dared to dream. He envisioned a life beyond the streets where his talent would be his salvation. He poured his heart into his music, each verse a step closer to his dreams. But fate had other plans and his dreams were tragically cut short. Julio Foolio became a symbol of both hope and loss, his story a testament to the fragility of life and the enduring power of music. Even in death, Julio Foolio's impact continued to reverberate. His music gained national attention, his story striking a chord with listeners. Tributes poured in, and he became a symbol of the struggle against gun violence. He inspired young artists to embrace their truth and fight for a better tomorrow. Julio Foolio's legacy transcended the streets, a testament to the enduring power of dreams. The sound of sirens sliced through the night, a chilling counterpoint to the sudden silence. Moments ago, laughter and music had filled the air. Now, the only sound was the wind, carrying the bitter scent of gunpowder. First responders arrived to chaos, witnesses dazed and disoriented. Julio's lifeless body lay on the pavement, his dreams extinguished. A wave of anguish swept over the city as the magnitude of the tragedy sunk in. News of Julio Foolio's murder spread like wildfire, igniting grief and outrage. Fans, friends, and fellow artists took to social media, their words a mixture of disbelief and heartbreak. Makeshift memorials sprang up, adorned with candles and flowers. The music that once brought joy now served as a poignant reminder of a life cut short. The city mourned, united in their grief, grappling with the senselessness of it all. Julio Foolio, who dreamed of a brighter future, was robbed of his chance to see it realized. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale investigation. Detectives scoured the crime scene, interviewed witnesses, and chased down leads. Rumors swirled, whispers of suspicion poisoning the air. Julio's past and affiliations became subject to intense scrutiny. The investigation struggled, hampered by a code of silence. Witnesses were hesitant to come forward, and those who did often provided conflicting accounts. The city grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress. Months passed by, and Foolio's murder remained unsolved. Then, a witness came forward with new information, providing a fresh lead. The investigation re-energized, shifting its focus. Surveillance footage was re-examined, phone records subpoenaed. A picture began to emerge, linking Julio's murder to a rival rap group. The walls were closing in, the net tightening around those suspected of involvement. The streets slowly began to reveal their truths. 3 months after Foolio's death, arrests were made, and those accused stood trial. The courtroom crackled with emotion as witnesses recounted the events. The prosecution presented a compelling case, arguing that Julio's murder was premeditated. The defense countered, raising questions about the reliability of evidence. The jury deliberated for days, their verdict carrying the weight of justice for a life taken too soon. The music industry mourned Foolio, a rising star with raw talent. His legacy became a cautionary tale of the dangers that plague young artists. His death forced a conversation about protecting young talent from the streets. The debate raged on, but one thing remained clear: Foolio's voice had been silenced. The music world grieved the loss of a unique talent, a life cut short before its time. In Jacksonville, the loss was felt profoundly. Julio was a son, a brother, a friend, a reflection of their struggles. Murals and candlelight vigils honored his enduring impact. His music took on a new poignancy, a reminder of the cost of violence. Amidst the grief, there was a sense of defiance. Foolio's music and spirit would not be forgotten. Foolio's murder exposed deep-seated divisions in Jacksonville. Some saw his death as a call to address the root causes of violence. Others clung to old ways, fueling the cycle of revenge. Community leaders organized rallies demanding an end to the violence. They urged the city to honor Julio's legacy by working towards a brighter future. The path to healing was long, the city struggling to break free from the cycle of pain. The music industry faced a reckoning after Foolio's death. Artists used their platforms to speak out against gun violence. Music became a tool for healing and reconciliation. Community programs offered young people an outlet to express themselves. Foolio's legacy lived on, a beacon of hope in a world searching for light. "5 years have passed since Foolio's voice was silenced. The pain of his loss still lingers, but a glimmer of hope emerged. The community channeled their grief into a determination to create a brighter future. Gun violence decreased, and community programs provided alternatives to the streets. More artists used their platforms to advocate for peace and mentor youth. Foolio's impact continues to resonate, sparking a movement for change and hope. Foolio's story is tragically common in cities across America. A young life extinguished too soon by the relentless grip of gun violence. He was more than just a statistic, more than a name on a police report. He was a son, a brother, a friend, a voice for the voiceless. The music industry lost a rising star, a talent brimming with authenticity and raw passion. The city mourned, grappling with the question that plagues us all in the face of such senseless loss. Why? Foolio's story, though steeped in sorrow, offers us a glimpse of the human spirit's resilience, the enduring power of dreams. The investigation into Foolio's murder, despite its initial fervor, eventually stalled. Witnesses, bound by the code of silence that permeates the streets, remained tight-lipped. The fear of retaliation, a potent silencer, protected those responsible, leaving a community to grapple with unanswered questions and a thirst for justice unquenched. The weight of this silence hangs heavy, a suffocating blanket over the streets he once called home. It's a silence born of fear, of loyalty, of a deeply ingrained mistrust of authority. It's a silence that allows violence to flourish, that protects perpetrators, and perpetuates a cycle of pain and suffering. But silence can also be a catalyst for reflection, for introspection, for a long overdue conversation about the root causes of violence. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, to acknowledge the role we all play in perpetuating a culture that often values retribution over justice, silence over truth. Breaking this silence requires courage, a willingness to speak truth to power, to challenge the status quo. It demands a collective effort, from law enforcement to community leaders to ordinary citizens, to create a safe space for dialogue, for healing, and for accountability. The what-ifs echo in the silence left by Foolio's absence. What if he had been born into different circumstances? What if he had been given the opportunities and support so many take for granted? What if his talent had been nurtured in a world that valued creativity over conflict? These questions haunt us, a painful reminder of the systemic inequities that plague our communities, that limit potential and stifle dreams. Julio's story is not an isolated incident. It's a stark reflection of the realities faced by countless young black men across America. We must confront these uncomfortable truths, acknowledge the role that poverty, lack of opportunity, and systemic racism play in perpetuating violence. We must invest in our communities, provide resources and support systems, and create pathways for young people to thrive, not just survive. Every child deserves the chance to reach their full potential, to live a life free from fear, to dream without limitations. Foolio's story, though tragically cut short, can serve as a catalyst for change, a reminder that we have the power to break the cycle of violence and create a brighter future for all. Foolio's voice may have been silenced, but his story continues to resonate, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the urgent need for change. His legacy, though forever intertwined with tragedy, has become a catalyst for a city finding its voice, a community rising from the ashes of grief to demand a better tomorrow. The streets of Jacksonville, once defined by violence and despair, are slowly transforming into canvases for hope and resilience. Murals celebrating his life and legacy adorn buildings, vibrant reminders of his enduring impact. Community gardens flourish where once only concrete and despair thrived, symbols of growth, renewal, and the indomitable spirit of a community refusing to be defined by its past. The fight against gun violence continues, but it's a fight fueled by Julio's memory, by the collective determination to honor his legacy, by creating a city where every child has the opportunity to thrive, to reach their full potential, to live a life free from fear. Foolio's story is a call to action, a reminder that we all have a role to play in building a more just, equitable, and peaceful world. It's a story that demands to be heard, a legacy that deserves to be honored, a hope that must never be extinguished.